welcome to Tabor Talk. So I'm going to continue here with this Dom Jr. Interview, and I'm going to pick up here where he's talking about Martina Navratilova. So I totally agree with Martina, and I agree what Don Jr. is saying here. So let me just get right into it. I'm going to just place my phone down. You can see
also, what he literally leading the charge for the LGBT community for 40 years. I mean, she's a lesbian, very active in this thing. She was, a proponent for those things, 35 years before it was cool. And when she said that, her own side just literally tried to destroy her, to cancel her, to this. So much so, I mean, she had to start walking it back. Now, this is a woman who is a professional athlete. She gets it. She understands the differences and was like, I don't know. I don't necessarily think this is fair or right. And she gets so destroyed that she has to walk it back, jeopardized 40 years of being an activist for these things. And then 3 weeks later, she has to start coming out and hitting Trump because that's the only way to get back in their good graces.
I don't think that's correct.
That's so insane.
The point you made, too, about, as a fan of the trans community, which I certainly am.
But that's funny because Jim Norton is a weirdo, a sex pervert. He's a nice guy. I actually like him a lot. And he's very open, but he sleeps with trans. I mean, he's fucked up. I'm Jim Norton. But anyway, hey, no judgment here, whatever. But I totally agree with Don Jr. and Martina Navratilova. I talked about it in my last thing. Like you have guys who identify as women, they go into women's sports and they crush. It's ridiculous. But where Don Jr.'s wrong is that Martina Navratilova felt that the left was coming after her, so she had to bash Trump. That's bullshit. It's not true. Let me continue.
You're right about the athletics because there are no trans men dominating male sports.
That's
it's
right.
just you're born with male ligaments, male muscle structure, bone structure.
That's
can't.
Right.
There are biological components.
It's not right. It's
in high school, there's not even this sort of testosterone requirement.
Right.
It's not right. And again, dude, I'm from New York. I have plenty of gay friends. I could care less. I'm like the most live and let live conservative there is.
I totally respect
that. But there
are
limitations, and that's the point: is that you can never be woke enough. You can never, you can be totally accepting. I mean,
so I'm from New York too. All right, I grew up in New Jersey, but basically my whole adult life has been New York. I worked in the city my whole life, and nobody gives a fuck about that if you're gay or trans or race. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I totally hear you there. No one gives a fuck if you're a tranny or gay in the city.
I could care less how someone identifies. It makes absolutely no difference to me. For me, happy people are productive people. Productive people move society forward.
Yep.
But now we need to take the next chunk. Now we need to take that next bite. Now we got to take it further. And there never seems to be an end.
Did you see what President Obama just said about cancel culture?
Yeah,
and it's really interesting because it's very similar to what you're saying, where you think of Navratilova and I said it.
Who?
Martina. You think of
close enough. He's obviously a homophobe because you can't get the name right.
Yeah, I mispronounced the name. That's violence. That's not good.
True. And he's very trouble, Sam.
This is bad. But he said, you have to understand, there are people who might say something here that doesn't take away from, like you were saying, 40 years.
Correct.
Of what they were doing.
Listen, I appreciate the point that he made. I appreciate the point that Ellen made, 2 weeks ago, where it was like, you're going to tell me who I can and can't be friends with? Now I'm not going to say that those people also weren't perhaps people throwing some fuel on the fire throughout the years. I mean, I think we can say that, but that's the point. You can take it to a certain level, but then the culture is to just keep going. I mean, like I said, the goalposts never seem to stop moving to justify whatever it is.
So is there a part of you that when you hear Obama say that, you go, oh, this is refreshing. It
is.
Yeah.
I wish it would have probably happened years ago, as opposed to now when we've hit a point where it's crazy. And like I said, I'm from New York City. I have plenty of liberal friends. I have plenty of this. And again, I'll take the political side because it's sort of the nature of my life these days. But I used to be able to argue a lot of their points, and when I see the debates, when I see the liberal debates, I mean, they literally spent more time talking about Donald Trump's Twitter account last time and essentially eliminate the president of the United States, free speech, than they did addressing China. That's a problem, guys. This is, I say this.
Okay, he's totally missing it here. And I know he's defending his father, but let me just repeat myself. This guy should not be president. His father is so, stating the obvious, he's unfit. I mean, of course, what the hell happened? How did we allow this to happen? I know free democracy, listen, democracy won fair and square, the Electoral College, even though he had 3 million fewer votes than Hillary, but it is what it is, the Electoral College. But I understand, like, dude, your father is a scumbag, lying gangster. He has no business being president, and he's ruining the country. That should be number one. All right, so let me just play this. I'm just going to step away for a minute, but I'm going to continue with this.
I travel the country, and, because of my hobbies and everything like that, I sort of have a pretty good, understanding of middle America, understanding the full irony that I am still the son of a billionaire from New York City. So I have to say that, today I'm not allowed to have an opinion. I'm certainly not allowed to state that opinion. I can't state it aggressively because that, I would be canceled. But, I think we get it. And, I try to talk about it a lot in the book, which is, again, I had a mother that escaped communism.
Right.
I grew up spending summers with my grandfather, who was a blue-collar electrician from communist Czechoslovakia, in Czechoslovakia. He sort of had that convo with my father and just said, what you have here in this country is incredible. You have to see the other side. And so I've waited in those bread lines that everyone thinks are so wonderful, not so great. So, for me, I've become much more, active in this as I see sort of that trend toward where socialism is it's like a mainstream thing on the other side. It's no longer a fringe element.
That's not true
it's
at all.
Actually, a party platform almost. And I still have my 93-year-old grandmother, who's not exactly a normal 93-year-old grandmother from the U.S. I mean, this is a woman who spent her early 20s hiding in the basement of her farmhouse for 2 years from the Nazis. Then lived under communist occupation, and she'll call me, and we're having this conversation. She sees CNN, over there in what's now the Czech Republic, because that's all they get. And it's like, you don't understand. It always sounds so good on paper. Everything's great. Everything's for free. Everything's this. You don't understand.
Who says that? This is just such a simplification.
Right, in her life. And,
He's totally
has
wrong.
real life experiences. And she's sitting there on the phone in tears for fear, of me being her grandchildren and her,
living under that system.
My kids, her great-grandchildren living under that system, because she's like,
no, that's not happening. What the fuck is he talking about?
We were sold this bill of goods before. It never works that way.
No kidding, dude.
But do you think there's a realistic threat that we would ever not be a capitalist country?
Listen, I see the...
See, this is all bullshit. It's just this spin. Nobody wants communism or socialism. I mean, you have in university, and there are some young kids who talk about, Karl Marx and the philosophy, and it is interesting, but everyone knows it's a failed system. So this is all just bullshit. Hey, I see it sometimes on social media that you want communism or socialism. That's totally wrong. Nobody wants that. And you really think that's a realistic fear? When you talk about a candidate that's the closest to socialism, and he's not a socialist, a pure socialist in the true sense of the word. I mean, Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's talking about, free college and Medicare for all. Those are good things, right? No one's talking about Mao Zedong and Stalin and, this is all bullshit. It's it's fucking preposterous, and I know what he's doing. His grandmother's afraid of that. Get the fuck out of here. All right, let me just play this. I'm going to step away for a minute. I'll come back.
Normalized. And that's, I think, her point, which is it always starts off here.
I see.
But the slippery slope never seems to stop. When you see sort of the indoctrination in academia from a young age, I mean, I see it with, my, kids in school and, what they're being pushed and what they're being taught. And I always said, and when I'm out there even speaking about, that system versus ours, or, I say, what's interesting, the Democrats, they could get some people to talk about some pretty amazing, how come there's not one person, and maybe one, Jim, but name one person who's lived under those systems. Meaning, name one person from former, Eastern Bloc Europe. One person from today's communist China. Bring it closer to home. One person from Venezuela who's no, let's bring that shit here.
Right. It's always the idea, idealizing the free stuff, or the idea of free stuff.
No one who's actually lived under these systems is here saying, no, we need that here. It's only in theory. If anything, those people are like, no. Like my grandmother, they're saying, go to southern Florida, speak to some people from Venezuela.
Right.
Like,
that's why they're in Florida, by the way.
Correct.
No one is fighting to get to Venezuela.
The boats only go one way, guys.
Right. I wanted to ask you too. Your dad has a very, really a bad relationship with the press, back and forth. Yeah. What do you think was the point of no return for that? Like, what happened where it was like, this is never going to turn around? This is only going to be a fight. Like, even Bush at times had some moments of calmness with them, or this seems like this is never going to change. What do you think was the turning point?
Honestly, I think it's just an accumulation, right? When you see, don't forget, the mainstream press gave him a lot of press early on not because they liked him. They gave him a lot of attention because they thought he'd be the easiest one for Hillary to win, to beat. Like,
and he supplied great.
That's not true.
TV and ratings,
some good material in there for sure. But
it's
was
total
that was
bullshit.
The genesis of it, and then you could see sort of just the one-sided.
Nobody
attack.
thought that.
Honestly, the mainstream media has done themselves the biggest disservice. I mean, I talk about it a lot in the book, but I feel like I could write 3 more volumes just every day. I mean, just look at this weekend, right? The Washington Post, right? Mm-hmm. Democracy dies in darkness. Yeah, bullshit. Al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, a guy that's literally burned journalists alive, a guy that's thrown homosexuals off of buildings, a guy that's killed women Christian missionaries, who's literally led ISIS for decades. He is, and I quote, an austere religious scholar who just liked watching soccer. But a kid like Nick Sandman, right, who's a 15-year-old kid, the Covington Catholic kid, right? 15-year-old kid.
Is he the kid that was yelling at the protest? Is that
no. He didn't do anything.
No. Oh, yeah. The staring kid. But we're talking about the same kid.
Let me pause this here.
But he had the audacity of being a white kid who's Christian from
MAGA
Kentucky
and
a
all
MAGA hat, which is like
bullshit.
The holy grail.
This is quite
wing.
annoying.
Like, we got him. They needed to destroy this kid. So that kid's a quote-unquote homegrown terrorist for standing his ground.
So why doesn't he talk about how disgraceful his father behaved after they killed al-Baghdadi? I played this last week. His stupid father was talking like a gangster and lying. Like, al-Baghdadi was crying and whimpering and screaming. It was a lie because there was no audio. When they called him on, I go, well, excuse me, Mr. President, like, how did you know you had? And he goes, I don't want to talk about it. He's just like, why don't they? Like, Jim is being nice. They're giving him softballs and they're just letting him go. I guess he's their guest, but like, dude, like, your fucking father is a monster. Like, did you hear what he said? The way he talked. And like I said in my other video, getting a terrorist and an ISIS is a good thing. That's great. That's good news. But you don't talk like, oh, he's crying and whimpering and we killed him. I go, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Do you think, like, even when George W. Bush, when Saddam Hussein was hanged, he was a class act. He goes, are you happy? I go, no, it's awful. It's terrible. This guy needed to be killed. We got him. But, I'm not doing backflips. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. It's the same thing. It's not like, oh, he's crying. You see what I mean? Like, why? And then he's just bullshitting about this kid with the red hat. It's annoying. All right, let me pause here and I'll continue on. Good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience.